What's going on, guys? This is the Gators final report with your host, Dylan Denmark. And wait for a couple of minutes for you guys to hop on as Florida took a beating. Florida took one to the chin. Really, most of the action happening late in the first half with Georgia winning pretty big, and Florida only scoring 7 points. Before we start, make sure you guys are checking into all of our post-game shows. Catch the Georgia post-game show that just wrapped up and finished on the SEC channel. Mark Rogers, as always, every Saturday will have a show every Saturday night. Iowa, Ohio State plays Penn State tonight. That should be a good one. Miami, they got a big win over Pitt. And just make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to all those channels at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. If you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop them. I'm going to wait for a couple of you guys to chime in real quick before we get rolling, because we're going to be on 3 different channels. We're at the Florida Gator channel, we're on the SEC channel, and we're at the official Voice of College Football YouTube channel. All right, so let's go ahead. Georgia comes out on top over Florida 34-7. It was pretty close at first. First quarter was 0-0. I thought it was pretty surprising. Georgia didn't run the ball as much, I thought, as they should have. Florida's defense played pretty well. And it's interesting, anytime there's a big game, and not to say that this was a big game, but this is a big matchup between Florida and Georgia. And everybody was talking about Florida's offense and Georgia's defense, and quickly turned into a surprising matchup between Florida's defense and Georgia's offense. And quickly, late in the first half, Florida goes with Anthony Richardson. It was interesting. I was listening to radio last week with Matt Hayes, national college football writer. He said that a source told him during the bye week that Emory Jones was taking all first-team reps. And then it was late last night and this morning I saw there was a lot of sources came out and said that Anthony Richardson is more than likely going to get the start, and he did. He got all the reps in the first half. He pretty much played the entire game until he got hurt until he got put in the concussion protocol. Dan Mullen, after the game, said he doesn't know what his update is, and they'll probably have to go throughout the week, and he'll have to go through the concussion protocol. But Anthony Richardson looked like a freshman against a really good defense. Some good, some bad, some ugly. Torrance gets the interception, and then Richardson fumbles. Florida fans wanted to get the forward progress. They get the whistle. They didn't. So then Richardson fumbles. Georgia pretty much gets a continuation drive. James Cook scores a touchdown. Richardson then throws a pick that was tipped by Mike Backer. And then the next drive, Richardson throws a pick 6. So pretty much like I said in the post-game show against LSU, I agree that Anthony Richardson should have been the quarterback rolling forward for Florida, but just understand when he goes in, he's going to make freshman mistakes. And he's going to make freshman mistakes, especially against a very good Georgia team where that there's not a lot of weaknesses on this Georgia defense. You can run on them like Florida has been against other teams. Florida ran the ball a lot better than I thought they would, but Georgia is Georgia, and Florida they missed a field goal. They missed 2 field goals. There was a 4th and 13 where I thought they should have rather kicked a field goal because it's 4th and 13 against one of the best defenses, and the chances of you getting a first down is slim. But I mean, that's kind of nitpicking because I don't think it really would have mattered with the end result of Georgia winning the way they did. But a lot of this game is going to be counted on for coaching and accountability, as Dan Mullen said. This game's on him. And the game is what I'm going to get a lot into is recruiting. Georgia has out-recruited Florida, and as they should have. And I'm going to go deep into why Florida – a lot of Florida fans and Denny Thompson, the guy in Jacksonville, he went on 1010XL, which is Jacksonville Sports Radio, which is the flagship station for the Gators, and he made a good point that Florida fans have a way too high of an expectation on what recruiting should be like, because Florida fans have this expectation that they're supposed to be competing with the Georgias and the Alabamas, and Florida doesn't have all of the resources and the facilities that a Georgia and Alabama has. But I'm going to get to that throughout the show. I was trying to get with Terry Norvell. He's not able to come on tonight, but I'll get with him throughout the week. As if you guys are just now joining us, this is the Gators Final Report. Georgia comes out on top 34-7 over Florida. Georgia will probably stay number one throughout the rest of the season unless they have a hiccup throughout the way. In Florida, shockingly, if I said at the beginning of the year Florida goes 4-4, not many people would have believed someone who would have said that, but here we are. And it's amazing. You go back to last season, Florida's 8-1 going into the LSU game. And since that time, Florida has been 4-6, 4-4 this season. And then you lose to LSU and you lose to Oklahoma in that bowl game. No Trent Whittemore, no Rick Wells. So an offensive receivers group that wasn't really that good, was a little thin already going into today's game. Dameon Pierce for the first time, shocked. I credit to Zach Goodall for the stat. Dameon Pierce, which I don't know what you guys think. Dameon Pierce is far and away Florida's best running back. They're Florida's most productive running back, I'll say. Today was the first game this season that Dameon Pierce passed his 8 carries, and he got 9 today. That was crazy to me. I mean, if you go to that Alabama game, you look at the Tennessee game, you look at the Kentucky game, Dameon Pierce has consistently been Florida's best running back. And understand that Florida's running back group is by far the best group, the most talented group of any position on Florida. And Naquan Wright is really good. And Malik Davis definitely gets his productivity, but Dameon Pierce needs to get the ball more. 9 carries isn't enough. And I know Richardson gets some of those carries, and when Jones played, he got some of those. But it's I don't know where Florida goes from here. You got to win games. You get on the road to South Carolina next week, and then you get Samford, and then you close out the season with Missouri and Florida State. Only Samford looks winnable, and it doesn't look like those South Carolina, Missouri, Florida State games are a shoo-in, specifically the way that Florida is playing. As I'm going to get to a couple of your guys' comments real quick here. Anthony says, just lost a program right now. Yeah, it's definitely took a complete 180. I could definitely go back to last season like I did earlier, but if you look at what Florida, I mean, just take the reaction after the Florida-Alabama game. Everybody was on cloud 9. Everybody was speaking of, oh, we were this close, and all we needed was an extra point or a 2-point conversion to tie it. And boy, it's after the first 4 games, after FAU, USF, Alabama, and Tennessee, this Florida team has done a complete 180 offensively with running the football. I think they finished with, let me see what they finished with rushing. I know Florida outgained Georgia stats-wise with yards, but Florida finished with 161 rushing yards. So the first 4 games, they averaged like 340, and then in their loss to Kentucky, LSU today, they're right at 160, 180 every game. So that looks like the reason why Florida has success for the first quarter of the season hasn't had some since. Do you think Mullen set up AR-15 to fail today? No, I just think that's credit to Georgia. I think Dan Mullen has a game plan, but you're very limited. Again, I know I didn't see much of the TV coverage. I saw the game, but I didn't listen to the guys on TV. I don't know if they mentioned it much. No Trent Whittemore, no Rick Wells, and a receiver group that's not really that talented is already thin. Anthony Richardson gets the whole first half for the first time in his career. You expected him to make fresh mistakes, and he did, as you saw late in the first half. But I don't think he set him up to fail. If Florida makes the field goal, it could be tied 3-3. They miss a chip shot field goal. So there are miscues along the way. But I mean, the ball being tipped, that's not Dan Mullen. The pick six, that's just the DB baiting Anthony Richardson and then him taking it back to the crib. The fumble that Anthony Richardson had. You can debate all you want about should the whistle been blown for forward progress. The referee didn't. But I mean, Anthony Richardson, I mean, he looked like a quarterback in his first game. I thought Mullen made the right decision in playing him today against Georgia. Offense looks totally lost. Yeah, ever since after those first 4 games, it hasn't been the same. Jet comments. Grantham roller coaster continues. Bama, it was bad. Vols, it was okay. Vandy, it was okay. Kentucky was good. LSU, horrible. Georgia, it was good. So strange. Yeah. Although I wouldn't say the Bama game plan was bad for the defense. I think a lot of that was the missed tackles that the secondary had. They could have made plays on third down to force Alabama to fourth down if you want to go that far. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you mostly. Defense is hot and cold, and the LSU game was really, really strange. It was just really odd how Florida had one of the best run defenses in the SEC, and then LSU's running back Davis Price rushes for a school record of almost 300 yards, pretty much, with pretty much 2 plays that counter Trey. I don't know. And another thing with that too, and let's stay with this with the defense. Ventrell Miller goes out, and when Dan Mullen, this is his 4th year at Florida. He's been there since 2018. There's a lot of guys playing out of position. You have Moon sometimes playing Mike, and then him going to the edge. And same thing with Cox. He's sometimes dropping in coverage. And I don't think he should ever drop in coverage. He should stay at your edge rush. But since Miller's out, you have to move around. It kind of baffles me that there's no one that is a sure backup Mike backer to Ventrell Miller to where you don't have to completely shift everybody around. I think part of that's coaching, part of that's recruiting. In Florida, if you looked at how they've been successful, they've had David Reese to anchor down the defense. They had Ventrell Miller to anchor down the defense, and you don't have that right now. And I could be a little biased in this, but I think, the middle linebacker is the most important position on the defense. He's the quarterback of the defense. He makes all the calls. He calls for the blitzes. He calls and checks everything up front. So him not being out there and mostly lost for most of the season, definitely hurts Florida, but there needs to be a backup that can be somewhat productive without having to completely flip the defense and not move Moon, Cox, and everybody else in the front 7. Anthony drops another comment. Defense did pretty good today. Offense, no, we just are never consistent on 3 phases of the game. Just so frustrating. Yeah. The offense couldn't move the ball. And when they did, they couldn't capitalize. And, give credit to Georgia too. They're a lot great defenses will let you move in between the 30s. And then once you get inside the red zone, they'll hold you to a field goal or hold you to 0. And that's exactly what Georgia did today. Florida moved the ball at times. And, they gosh, how many turnover on downs did Florida get on 4th down? Florida went 2 for 4 on 4th down. They went for it on a 4th and 13. Florida misses 2 field goals. The 4th and 13, Mullen, for the ones that don't know, he was really late to his post game conference rather. And he kept it short and sweet like he does after every loss. He didn't say much. We'll evaluate this. He said he went with a hot hand starting at AR. after the LSU game. So that was that. And also another thing that I forgot to mention, Florida sings the alma mater after every single game, win or lose. There was only like a handful of like 4 or 5 players that went over by the band and sung the alma mater. Pouncey was one, Carter was one, Braun was one, and there was another player. That's say what you want, have your opinion. That's not a good look. Especially for a guy like Dan Mullen that always has an opinion and always wants to run his mouth when things are good, but then when things aren't going well, you're a complete opposite. Again, I'm always consistent. Whatever you are in life, just be consistent. If you're going to constantly run your mouth when you're winning and when you're losing. If you're humble, always be humble. And Dan Mullen hasn't. He wants to run his mouth and say a lot of things when the program's going good and cool. I don't have an issue with that. But if you look at every loss Florida's had, keeps his answers very brief with the media, especially when they question him about quarterback or a game plan or position players, whatever. I don't exactly agree with that. Endless Adventures drops. Pretty much the Kentucky game exactly. Yeah, a little bit. Only thing that was different was Florida had a lead in the first half. Florida couldn't do anything offensively this game. They were shut out. Richardson makes a couple boneheaded plays, which is expected from a freshman. Kirby Smart said this after the game. You can outcoach coaches, but you can't outcoach recruiting. And I kind of want to segue into recruiting specifically with Florida fans. You could definitely see that Georgia, no pun intended here, but Georgia just has more dogs. If you look at, you can just go, you go through all their starters and you can go to their backups, and the backups are still just as good as the starters. And Florida doesn't have that right now. And I'm going to go with this. I was listening to the Sports Den, James Coleman and Denny Thompson. Denny Thompson trains quarterbacks in Jacksonville. James Coleman, he contributes sometimes to Florida State's channel here at the Voice of College Football. And Denny Thompson was talking about Florida fans have too much of an expectation on what Florida should be doing in recruiting. And I'll explain it like this. And I know just a tidbit. And guys, please drop any comments on what your opinion is on Florida's recruiting. Florida is so far behind in facilities, and it's not even close. Again, you're watching the Gators Final Report. If you're just joining us, I'm your host, Dylan Denmark, host of On the Mark with Denmark. Florida is so far behind in football facilities. Just think about this stat. There are 65 Power 5 teams, okay? 65 of them. That's the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, okay? Of those 65 teams in the Big 5, the Power 5, about 57 of them, I'll just say 60, have a football-only facility. You know one of those teams that doesn't have a football-only facility? The University of Florida. That's number one. Number two, Florida was way behind in getting a football indoor facility. They got that in 2014 when everybody else who Florida's expected to compete with, Alabama, the Georgias, they all got theirs before Florida. If you look at what Georgia has and Alabama has, what Florida's expected to compete with, they have their facilities to rehab their players better, to get treatment for their players with anything. Florida has some of it, but not to the extent of Alabama and Georgia. There was Denny Thompson was talking about Georgia and Alabama. They'll have a brand new facility that was just finished 2 years ago, and they're already redoing that facility right now because the technology that was used for that facility was old, and they need to redo it because that's the same thing with technology. Just like an iPhone, for example. The iPhone. I have the 12. Of course, the iPhone 12 is not the same as the iPhone 8. That's why you have to stay up to date. That's why people want it. And Florida has to get up to date with those facilities. Another thing, you're talking to 17 and 18-year-olds. And when they go on these official trips, they wear the full uniform. When you go to Georgia and Alabama, they go on the field. They have the lights set up all kind of cool ways to get photographers. They get the pictures. You know what Florida has? Florida has an outdated locker room, and they take pictures behind a green screen. Think about that. Florida is an outdated locker room behind a green screen. They get one picture like this, like a camera I have here. Click, that's it. Or on your iPhone. And Alabama, Georgia are doing way cool things. And I know it's just a little thing, but I mean, we're talking about 17 and 18-year-olds. And 17 and 18-year-olds care about what's cool. And when you have those little things, I'm just talking about a little bit of stuff. And I'm just talking about, like I said, what the Sports Den said with Denny Thompson and James Coleman. And they're around these athletes. They don't recruit these athletes. They work with them. Denny Thompson trains quarterbacks. He trained Anthony Richardson. He trains Carson Beck at Georgia. Among the few trains guys that are in college and pro. But that was just a little bit of what he was talking about. And I'll add this too. Georgia's getting all of these guys. They're nationally recruiting. And Florida's not doing that well in state. Now, I know Dan Mullen will always say, well, these guys they weren't on our list and yada, yada, yada. And that's fine. You can explain that any way you want, Coach. But if you look at the state, it used to be in the 90s, because I know there will be adults. I don't know about what you guys, your opinion is, but there will be guys that will say, and some boosters will say, well, Spurrier didn't need this. Bow didn't need it at Florida State. If you want to talk about Florida State, because Florida State is kind of in the same vicinity with Florida when it comes to facilities. And they built their indoor facility pretty much at the same time as Florida did. Florida, if you look in state, what was in the 90s, there was no FAU, there was no UCF, there was no FIU, and if they were just starting to become something. USF's another one. So all of those recruits that would be walk-ons that could go to Florida State, Miami, well, they're not going to go walk on to Florida anymore because they could start day one at one of those schools. So, and that's something that Bowden and Spurrier didn't have to deal with. And you always have to stay up to date. You have to stay up to date with social media. Dan Mullen stays up to the game with the social media. I don't know how much more Norvell is and Manny Diaz. It doesn't look like Manny Diaz is going to stay at Miami much longer. But that's just a few of the things that you have to worry about with recruiting. And Florida doesn't have all of the resources that Alabama and Georgia have. And people expect every signing day for Florida to be right with an Alabama and to be right with a Georgia. And that's just not fair. I'm not saying that's just my opinion. And Florida's way behind on that. And I mean, you guys can let me know in the comments section. But I want to go back to this, and I'm going to talk with Pat Dooley one day. It won't be, in the next couple of weeks. I want to wait after football season. Think about this for a moment. If you could go back in time to when Florida dominated football and basketball, okay? Florida wins the national title in January of 2007. Let's take a step back. They win a they win the national title in basketball in April of 2007, April of 2006, January of 2007, they won the football national title for Ohio State, and then they beat Oklahoma in January of 2009. 4 national titles in a span of 2 years. What did Florida do with that? And anybody that has a comment, please let me know. What did Florida do with the 4 national titles they won in a span of 2 years with the 2 biggest sports, football and basketball? 2 of which they did in the same year. What did they do with publicity? What did they do with money? What did they do with anything athletically? I was a fan. In 2010, I was 12 years old. They just got a new baseball stadium. They didn't get the indoor practice facility until 2014. I mean, what did they do? They renovated the Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, but I mean, it wasn't much of anything. I mean, they put lights around the SEC titles and the national championship titles. But what else? you know, I always just think about if Alabama had the success that Florida did from '06 to '09 in football and basketball, I think they would do it completely different. I understand that today's media is different than today. And in Florida, their enrollment rate went up. I can say that. And after that enrollment rate went up, after Tebow and Joakim Noah and those guys, after they went through, getting into Florida became a lot harder. So those quote unquote get in guys that your 2.0 guys, the guys that didn't need high test scores before, they needed some. I don't know what the number is, but I'll just say I'll say the number was 30 for football. You could have used 30 of those guys that had low scores or low GPA, and now the number went down from a lot down from 30 from 2010 on. Not saying that's an excuse, but that's another reason why Florida was able to get those guys back then. And Muschamp, he got #1 recruiting classes, but it seems like each year that has went on after Muschamp, Florida hasn't been able to, do that good in recruiting. So I know I just went on a tangent, but let's see what you guys have said so far in the comments. As you're listening to the Gators Final Report, I am your host, Dylan Denmark. I host a podcast on the Mark with Denmark as I host every single Florida Gator post-game show. We're on at the Voice of College Football on the SEC channel and the Florida Gator channel. Make sure we're giving a thumbs up and subscribing to all of the channels. And thank you guys for watching and dropping comments and watching along today. Make sure you guys are also checking out all of the post-game shows on all of the other channels featured at the Voice of College Football, whether it be Iowa, Ohio State as they play Penn State, Florida State, Florida State, all got barely beat by Clemson. They have a post-game show. Georgia finishes up their post-game show right before I went on. But going back to what I was saying with recruiting, because a lot of this game, I know, Florida doesn't play good, and you can say what you want. Richardson doesn't play. He played good and bad at times, as you would expect from a freshman quarterback in his first career game against the best defense in football. But, and a lot of people want to talk about recruiting, but I think Florida fans, if you're just joining us, have an unrealistic expectation of what Florida is supposed to be. As Jet said, part of the facility's issue is the USF has done a horrible job at managing its growth. There's hardly any land left to build on. Yeah, there's hardly any land in Gainesville, period. And it's like the adults say, you have to keep up with the Joneses, and Florida had a prime opportunity with everything that happened from '06 to '09 to jump on all that stuff, and they didn't. And I was just a kid. I'm only 23 now. I graduated from UF last year. It didn't seem like Florida did much of anything with the publicity, with the money, other than the enrollment rate skyrocketing up and it getting a little hard to get into UF. That's about the only thing I could think of. Yeah, the iPhone 4 still makes calls. Yep, it does make calls, but if you want to use the internet and all the apps like the cool kids do, you got to stay up to date like this one with the iPhone 12, and that's what Georgia and Alabama are doing, and Florida is still using the iPhone 4. Uga didn't get his indoor facility until 2018. Okay, so a lot of schools, I'll say. So Georgia wasn't one of them. I name dropped Georgia there. A lot of schools had an indoor practice facility before Florida did. Yeah, here's another good comment that I forgot to mention. Florida doesn't spend on recruiting. They definitely have. So the list came out this week on recruiting. Georgia they spent, I think it was last year, just over $3 million, as did Alabama. Those were only two schools, I think, that spent over $3 million. Florida, just over $1 million. Georgia and Alabama were 1 and 2. Florida was like 13, 14, something like that. So, it's like I'll ask you guys. If I gave you $3 million to build a house and I had $1 million to build a house, which house is going to look better? The house with $3 million. It's just that simple. Anthony drops another comment. You're right, though, but that's what gets recruits, not a green screen. He's our recruiter ranking 18th, lost two to four 5-star recruits. You definitely need to put more money into recruiting. Yeah. I mean, that's how you get all your players. And I know that Dan Mullen's done a great job in the transfer portal, but you got to get these guys in from day one and get them in the program. And it's like, look at the running back position. Look at the running back group. You got Lingard, a 5-star, and Bowman, a 5-star, transfer from Miami and Clemson. Haven't played a meaningful snap in a big game so far this season. Now, I think it's because Mullen runs a complex offense and he wants to get the guys fully developed and them knowing what they want to do, knowing what they can do before he puts them in. And it's hard to do that if they transfer in and then plug and play. If you looked at everybody who's played, Pierce has been there since Mullen's first year. Davis has been in the program since Jim McElwain in 2017, and Naquan Wright was there last year too. So Jet drops. They did get this complex. They did, and that was for all the athletes. That's not. I don't think that was just for the football. That's for all the athletes to study. But a football only facility helps out so much because something the average person doesn't understand is football players, they wake up 5, 6 a.m. every day, and they don't go to bed until 9, 10 p.m. So you wake up, you do your workouts, whatever. You go to class, and then when you're not in class, you're at that football-only facility. And you need things to do. And that's where all of these players spend their entire day. And if Georgia, Alabama have all the cool things and they stay up to date on all the cool stuff, it's kind of hard to not go to one of those schools and instead go to Florida unless you just always wanted to be a Gator or you just want to play for a coach. I mean, it's one of those things that Florida's behind in. And, what you have to give to players is the main reason why you go to a school. So if you missed that, I talked about that at length 20 minutes ago. So, and if you missed it, you can archive it at the Voice of College Football on the SEC or the Florida Gator channel here on YouTube. Jed drops another comment. Kids will play for winners. If Saban came to UF right now, UF would have a top 5 class immediately. Yeah, that's true. Winning does cure a lot of stuff, but I still think taking pictures behind a green screen when they're not doing that at Georgia and Alabama and doing a lot of I'd say cool stuff. It just makes it harder to get these guys in. Not making an excuse. Because none of it's all Mullen's fault. And maybe recruiting will change once Florida gets its football-only facility. I think it's supposed to get there and be complete within the start of next year. I think the latest by the summer. Because the baseball has its own field by a softball field now. And what was the old baseball field is still under construction, will be football only. Because for the people that don't know, I would always park my car and walk to do the tailgate when I was a student at UF for Jeff Cardozo and Pat Dooley. And every time I would walk, so the show starts at 4, I would park my car like 3:30 to walk from the football stadium to Weimer Hall where the radio show was. And the football players would be always walking that way. And again, if you're just joining us, almost every single school in the Power 5 has a football-only facility. Florida is not one of those programs. I think it's like 60 programs of the 65 have a football-only facility. Florida's not one of them. Think about that. It's kind of crazy. It's total yards, top, first downs, turnovers were all rather even this game, yet the score reflects a whooping. Florida even had the edge in all but turnovers. That was 3 each. Yeah. And a lot of that is, the total yards was kind of skewed because Georgia had 2 short drives to score a touchdown where they scored with James Cook, and I forget who scored the other touchdown after the Richardson first interception, and then the pick 6. So But yeah, the yards were Florida did technically outgain Georgia, but you know when you have to go long drives and uh, you know against a good, really good Georgia defense, it's just a numbers game. You're playing a probability at that point. Vibes Live Chicago says, "Where's Florida go from here?" Well, at this rate, you just got to prepare for next season. Uh, you roll with Anthony Richardson now. Richardson is in the concussion protocol. He took a blow to the head, and he didn't come back in for the rest of the game. So we'll see what practice looks like for this week. Florida plays South Carolina 7:30. So we'll see. Richardson should be the guy going forward, but at this rate, you should just prepare for next season. I mean, this season's a lost cause. You don't have all of the goals that Florida wanted. Were already lost before the season. So all you can do is just hope to, get some guys to play. A lot of your young guys to play, and just hope for the best. You're not playing a lot of good teams down the stretch. Not saying they can't be beaten against South Carolina, Missouri, and Florida State, and then you have Samford in 2 weeks as well. But you're just getting young guys to play, and playing a lot of your redshirt freshmen. I saw Marcus Burke, the kid I knew growing up. He got in at receiver at the very end of the Florida Georgia game. Guys like him, Austin Barber's another guy, and a lot of your freshmen that don't play that can get that third, fourth game as a redshirt. Play them in your last few games against Florida State and in the bowl game. But I mean, it's definitely crazy to think Florida's 4-4, specifically after what happened after the Alabama game. Football is more complicated than stats. Florida had one possession start their last from their own 25. Georgia started every possession past their 25. Details matter. Yeah. And again, football's a numbers game. If you got to go 80, 70, 80, 90 yards and Georgia only goes 15, 20, of course, Florida should have more yards. And Florida didn't execute. Georgia had an excellent run defense. Georgia held Florida to 0 points multiple times. Missing a field goal, missing 2 field goals rather, and then on a 4th and 13, I thought Florida should have kicked a field goal. They didn't, but I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have, the final score wouldn't have changed at all had Florida made those field goals. Anthony drops another comment. As painful as it is for me to say, Mullen, not a good recruiter. You're right, Muschamp, and I think he meant McElwain recruited way better than Mullen. Just don't think he can get us to a championship. So I think another thing to add to the comment that where do we go from here? From Vibes Live Chicago. Number one, Florida. What Dan Mullen has to do at the end of the season, he has to let go of Todd Grantham. That's a given. You have to get rid of Todd Grantham, and if you want to go more into detail, if you want to get rid of some more of your defensive staff, because Todd Grantham is not going to be a guy that is going to get you to what you want to be, which is winning the East consistently, winning SEC titles, and playing for a playoff and playing for national titles. Nick Saban said this week that he plans to go for another 10 years. So I'm going to go on the assumption that Nick Saban is going to get most of those 10 years. So essentially, you have to ask yourself this question. Does Florida have what it takes to compete with Georgia year to year? And what does Florida need to do that? And then compete with Alabama when you get to the SEC title. Number one, that's not going to happen with Todd Grantham. And that has nothing to do with what happened today. Florida's defense played good. And they did what they could, especially with Florida's turnovers and playing against short fields. But you have to make that change, especially after the season Florida had last year. Florida could have done something big last season, and the amount of missed tackles, the amount of times that Florida had guys not lined up correctly, And then the same thing happened against LSU, where the defense just absolutely implodes. You have 6 men in the box when LSU's doing one play counter trey. And all you're doing, only thing LSU did in that game was they looked at the formation. They had one side overloaded and Florida oversides to that one side. They'd run the counter. And if Florida runs it even, they run to the power side because that's where your tight end and your two tight ends are. And that was literally the only play they ran rushing for more than 300 yards when an Alabama team couldn't even get 100 on them. So it's one of those things you have to ask yourself, what do you expect? And I don't think you can do that with Todd Grantham. Vibes Live Chicago asks another comment. Do you believe Dan's the guy for the job going forward? Yeah, I think he's the guy, but you got to make some. Like I said, you got to make some coaching changes. I think he's the guy on offense. You get your football only facility come next offseason. Let's see if that changes anything. The preview videos look spectacular as they should. So we'll see what that looks like, and then you got to make defensive changes, as I just said. Yeah, again, Anthony, the UF is a top 5 school in the nation. One wants to put more money in recruiting. Better than recruits mean better results. Better results mean better money for the program. Yeah, and it's just one of those things. What did Florida want to value after Tebow left? Florida went hard academics, and you're seeing it's paying off on the academic side. Florida is now a top 5 program, according to what most people go by, the U.S. News, whatever it is that they go by, the magazine. Florida's top 5 in that now. They were top 10 for a while. They keep moving up and up, and Florida takes some pride in that. It's not to make an excuse for the football team and the other athletics, but that's a factor. And if your guys are just joining us from what I said earlier about recruiting, I think Florida fans have an unrealistic expectation, and it's. The facilities are behind for Florida. A lot of the things they do are outdated that Georgia and Alabama are on top of. And, Florida expects to be with Alabama, Georgia. And Georgia and Alabama spend $3 million in recruiting. Florida spends $1 million. I'll give you a quick story. I was listening to, again, what Denny Thompson was saying on the Sports Den. This was last Friday. Alabama has, this was a couple of years ago, 7 private jets. So, making a weekend trip, Friday to Sunday, especially, when you have a bye week, you could go in one state, let's just say Florida, in the state of Florida, for example, you could go to Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, take a stop in Gainesville, Tallahassee, or any small town in that circle, boom, boom, boom. If you have to drive, or you have a limited amount of private jets, makes it that much harder to recruit. It makes it that much harder to get in front of guys and face-to-face and shake their hands, So recruiting is definitely an issue, and it's one of the reasons why Georgia outplayed Florida today. And Kirby Smart said, you can outcoach coaching, but you can't outcoach recruiting. And, you saw today Georgia, to no surprise, they got dudes top to bottom, first and second string, and Florida doesn't have that. Yeah. Kirby just boat raced Florida with backup quarterback. Yeah. Think about that. Think about the Stetson Bennett that Florida played last year and then the Stetson Bennett that plays this year. Now, I don't think I missed some parts of the game. There weren't many times where Stetson Bennett threw it downfield, and I thought that's what Stetson Bennett and his Georgia offense was going to do to Florida. It was interesting. I began the show. Florida, the matchup that everybody talked about coming to this game was, what was Georgia's defense going to be like against Florida's offense, as deservedly so. That was, Georgia's, the strength is their defense, and Florida, Anthony Richardson was the main topic. But, it had the matchup that was most interesting was the Florida defense and the Georgia offense, because I thought, going off of what Florida played against LSU, and LSU run for 300-plus yards on the ground, that Georgia was going to attempt to do that. And then what happens is you load the box, and Stetson Bennett can throw over the top like he did against Arkansas and against a lot of the teams that Georgia's played already. And that didn't happen. Florida did a good job of containing the run game for the most part, and doing what they could, especially with the 3 turnovers that Florida had throughout the game. But, it's just the thing that gets to me most is that Mullen's an offensive guy. And if you look at the big games so far this season for Florida, pretty much all the games they've lost. And I'll include Tennessee in this one too. So the 5 games, Bama, Tennessee, Kentucky, LSU, and Georgia. All 5 games have not been a good first half offensively for Florida. All 5. Florida got out to a 21-0 deficit at the early in the second quarter. They make it 21-9 at halftime. Florida barely leads Kentucky by 3 at halftime, and they don't score in the second half. Florida was, I think, tied, or they were up 3 against Tennessee. I can't remember exactly at halftime. Florida only scored 6 points in the first half against LSU before Florida gets a Hail Mary, whatever you want to call it, a go route that LSU didn't decide to cover, and Florida somehow gets 13 points going at halftime. And then today, you get 0 points. Now, Florida moved the ball, but then your kicker can't make a field goal. You go for it on 4th and 13. You should have kicked the field goal. And, that's credit to Georgia's defense. But you're coming off a bye week. And understand Georgia did too, but that's when your game plan has to be really, really good. All the really good teams that have good coaches, when you give them more time to prepare, they're usually better. And that wasn't the case today. I mean, look at Alabama every time they play in a playoff game. When you give Nick Saban 3 weeks to prepare for a playoff game, he always is pretty good. So that's that, and they rolled with Anthony Richardson to start the game as they should have. I thought he's the better quarterback. He gave you the best chance to win today, and he made freshman mistakes. And that's what I said after the LSU game. It's fine that you want to start Anthony Richardson. That's cool, but I understand when you throw him in there, he's going to do things that scratch your head as he did today. And I don't have a problem with it. Just the fans that want that. And then, they get on Emory Jones' case when he throws picks like that. But just understand that Anthony Richardson is more prone to do the same thing. Oh, yeah. So Mullen didn't say much at his press conference. I want to see on Twitter if he said anything. So for the people that don't know, Florida always sings their alma mater after the game. And, the players and the coaches and everybody go by the band. They sing the alma mater, whatever. None of the coaches went. Mullen didn't go. Only Pouncey, Carter, Braun, and there were I think Moon were the only players that went over and sung the alma mater. Have your opinion. That's not a good look. That's not a good look at all, especially where things are right now. Florida's 4-4. I'll probably finish behind Tennessee in the SEC, which is, funny to say. But Mullen, just like every other time he's lost, every other time he's lost after a game, he kept everything short and sweet. He said he'll evaluate it. The only interesting thing he said was the Richardson, with him getting concussion, he doesn't have any update. And, of course, he'll play it throughout the week. As I'm trying to see more information. Yeah, so more context. Dan Mullen hasn't done that for any game, win or lose, not to go to the alma mater by the band for any game. He's always gone over there and sung it. He didn't do that after the Georgia game. And this is from on Twitter, Sammy Harris, I think a UF student. She said some players followed Mullen into the locker room, and others asked coaches where they were supposed to go, the locker room or the support band. So that's just not a good look. You got to be consistent. If you do it after every win and you do it after most losses, why Why would you change that today? Um, but yeah, Mullen kept it pretty short with his post game press conference, not saying much again, just like he did against LSU and Kentucky. Yeah, Anthony Mullen didn't say he's going to make any changes in the in season when it comes to Todd Grantham and defense. Although I think he should get rid of him after the season because Todd Grantham, and again, this doesn't have to do with today's game, but he's not going to give you a championship level defense for Florida, where Florida wants to go, winning SEC titles, winning the Eastern Division, and competing with Bama. Um, Jet says Mullen is definitely not the guy. Every problem is his doing. You can't just get a new DC and expect Mullen to be a new coach. He will never change. He must be fired. Yeah, he's stubborn. And football coaches are the most stubborn human beings, in my opinion, on the planet. And the only way to change that is when you lose. And Dan Mullen hasn't lost like this before. Dan Mullen had a lot of success at Mississippi State. He hasn't lost like this at Florida. In his first year, Florida lost to Kentucky, Missouri, and Georgia in 2018. But those were losses. They were a couple of head scratchers, but it was his first year in the program, and they ended the season on the right track. This season, you're already seeing it started taking a toll on recruiting. He's already lost a couple of his big recruits for the class of, I guess it would be 22. So recruiting should change, I think, a little bit, or it should, after you get the football only facility. And then offensively, I don't think anything will change. But I'm not willing to go 100% yet that Dan Mullen isn't the guy, and that you need to get rid of him. You have your quarterback for the future, Anthony Richardson. Defense needs a new guy, and Dan Mullen's still a good coach. I mean, if I know this isn't what's happened, but if you look at everything Dan Mullen did previous of Alabama, I think most Florida fans would tell you that he's done a good job, that he is a great offensive personnel and yada, yada, yada. And it hasn't been like that the last couple of weeks. Now, a lot of that, you could say he's lost a lot of dudes to the NFL on the outside. Florida this season doesn't have someone to take the top off the defense, which makes it more difficult that you had last year with Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts. The offensive line isn't as good. But I'm not willing to go as far as to, we need to get rid of Mullen just because he's not having a good season. You make a good point here. Senator, recruiting matters when you're having a bad game. In a bad game, your high-ranked recruits can outplay mistakes. Every team has a bad game during the season. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And I wonder what's just the way that the program is at right now. Florida. If you go back to the very end of 2020, going into the LSU game, Florida's 8-1. Only loss is to A&M on a game-winning field goal as time expired. And since then, they lost to LSU, they lost to Oklahoma, and they're 4-4. And year number 4 for Florida. And one of the big things is, this wasn't a big thing today, and this has nothing to do with why Florida lost, but no Trent Whittemore, no Rick Wells, guys that have been productive and played receiver for Florida all year. And the receiver group isn't as talented as it was last year. So a receiver group that isn't as good just got thinner for today's game. Copeland wasn't much of a factor again. Again, I guess this is part of the personnel, or I don't know if he's covered up every time there's Florida targets him on offense. He doesn't get any catches or much of any production in the first half of any game, as he finished with Copeland finished with 2 catches for 27 yards. Shorter finished with 4 catches and only. So this is how it was for Florida receiving. Shorter, Gamble, Henderson, and Davis all had 4 catches each. Zipper and Copeland had 2, and then Weston and Wright had 1. So, and Florida this season hasn't used a tight end nowhere near like they did last year. I understand you don't have Kyle Pitts, but Gamble and Zipper looked pretty promising last year. You saw the plays they made last year. You go, okay, they're gonna get some reps in the offseason. They're gonna get time in spring, and they're gonna get better. And nothing's shown for that. You don't have the guy to take the top off the defense. The run blocking hasn't been nowhere near the same as it was in the first 4 games. Florida was running like at best in the nation with like just under 400 yards a game. And the LSU, Kentucky, and this game today against Georgia, Florida's had right under 200. So, the success rate for Florida is running the football. Now, you played a pretty good defense in Georgia today, and that's their MO. But, if you're not able to run the football, Anthony Richardson needs the run game so he can take the ball off and throw it, take the top off the defense. And that's something neither team did today, Florida or Georgia. Richardson couldn't, there was no threat to throw it downfield, or no threat of the run. So, the guys didn't need to buy it. And they tried a couple trick plays. Davis on a halfback pass. They didn't buy it. Mullen tried a double pass with Jones at quarterback and Richardson at receiver, and Georgia didn't bite. So they tried it. But again, I mean, if for a defense, when you have to account for multiple things, that's when things break down. And for Georgia, the run game was never a threat. So that's why, when you try to double pass or halfback pass, they didn't really bite. So Senator asked the question, watching Mullen, I have to ask, does he want to be there or somewhere else? I don't think he does. I understand things are bad, but he just got a contract extension before the start of this season, along with him and Mike White. I think it was in June or July in the summer. He's not going anywhere. I know a lot of people aren't happy. Performance hasn't been good this season. He's not going anywhere. The buyout's too big. It would be something catastrophic, as in Jim McElwain faking a death threat or something happening off the field that doesn't have to do with football for him to be fired. That's just my opinion. Not saying that's right or wrong, but he's not going anywhere. So, I mean, you can try and talk about it, but it would take for him to lose 2 of the last 4 games and him to bomb next season for Florida to seriously consider firing him and letting him go. Senator also drops in. Gators were supposed to be in rebuild mode this year, but a strong loss against Bama made people think otherwise. Is this a rebuild year or is this a new look Gators? No, this is a rebuild year for sure. It's just what surprised most Florida fans is that it's Florida. What they were the first 4 games has been completely different from what they have been since. Again, they played good defense. They ran the ball for almost 400 yards a game against FAU, USF, Bama, Tennessee, and it's been a complete opposite since. I don't know what has changed. I talked with Jeff Cardozo on the Florida Gator channel, and there were 3 linemen that were hurt for Kentucky, but it's just been and every loss has been different. That's another thing. The Alabama game, you fall behind. The players aren't able to succeed on 3rd down, stopping Alabama. That's not coaching, in my opinion. That's the players not making a play. Again, coaching is just putting the players in position to make plays. So the Alabama game, you couldn't stop them on 3rd down. the Kentucky game, the offense couldn't do nothing, and that was probably Mullen's worst performance on offense. Defense played well that game. The LSU game, the defense couldn't stop anything, and LSU scores almost half 100, and your offense scores 42. Anytime your offense scores 42, you should win that game. Period. Point blank. And LSU ran one play. So Bama, you fall behind. Kentucky, you can't score. LSU, you can't stop them. And then today, it was kind of a mix of both. Although I thought the defense played well, you just couldn't score against the Georgia defense. You couldn't score against the Georgia defense. And on offense, it was just you couldn't. The way for Florida to succeed on offense is to run the ball. And when you give Georgia short fields, good luck, because they ran off 21 points in a span of just 2 to 3 minutes, and then they ended up winning. I think it was what was the final? It was 34-7. So Georgia covers the spread if you care about that. I forget what the over under was. Let me look at that real quick. I think the under, I think the over under was like 51, so the under did hit. But and another thing, JT Daniels didn't even play. Most people were expecting everybody, both quarterbacks play for Florida and Georgia, and for the most part, Emory didn't play until Richardson got hurt, and then Stetson Bennett was the dude the whole way. Yeah, this is a good joke. I'll just drop Dan Mullen dressed up as a head coach for Halloween. We're at Halloween Eve. Anthony, thanks for watching as he drops a comment. Guys, this is the Gators final report. We're at the Voice of College Football's YouTube channel on the SEC and Florida Gator channel. Make sure we're subscribing and liking all of the content that's posted there, and checking out all of the other post-game shows. When it comes to Georgia, that finished their show before we started here. Florida State, they narrowly lost to Clemson. Ohio State, they play a big one tonight against Penn State, as they're playing right now, and a whole lot of other shows. If you go at the Voice of College Football, click it. There'll be a featured page, and there's a bunch of shows that can feature the content that you're looking forward to, and you can archive it at any time. As we get to Anthony's comment here, I think Dan needs to evaluate himself. And look at Kirby, look at Saban. He'll fly in on a helicopter, go see a recruit not down. He'll just send a text message. Again, this goes back to what your resources are. Georgia and Bama spend $3 million. Florida spends $1 million. Georgia and Bama have all the facilities. Florida doesn't. I'm not saying that Florida can't have the budget to get a helicopter or whatever, but it's just everything adds up with recruiting. And when you're talking to a 17 and 18-year-old, everything matters. Almost cool. Again, if you're just joining us and you didn't see what I spoke about earlier with recruiting, Georgia has the best recovery rooms to get rehab and recover for treatment, as does Bama. Florida doesn't have that. Georgia, Bama have a football-only facility. Florida doesn't. Florida, and I kind of can't piggybacked on this, Florida dominated from 06 to 09, not only football, but basketball. And all the money and publicity that Florida got, and those 4 national titles, 2 each in football and basketball, what did they do with all the money and publicity that came with that? They didn't get their indoor practice facility until 2014. And, you have to be innovative. You have to stay with the Joneses, as adults say. And Florida, they didn't do that. They lagged behind. Boosters, I guess Spurrier didn't need it. Ron Zook didn't need it. He was a good recruiter. Obviously, he didn't win. Urban Meyer didn't need it. So why do you need it for Muschamp, McElwain, and then Mullen? And that's just, you can't think like that. You can't think, well, this is how it was in the 90s, so we're going to stay the same way. No, you live in a different day and age, and especially in the state of Florida, when the 3 big dogs in the 80s and 90s were Miami, Florida State, Florida, and that was it. And I went into detail more earlier in the show say I'm a high school recruit and say I'm 170 pounds and I'm a receiver and I want to I'm not good enough to get a scholarship at one of the three big schools in the state of Florida. Well, what I would have done was I would have walked on and went somewhere and Florida State, Miami, and I would have been groomed in the program and I would have played my redshirt junior year. I would have been 4 years in and I would have played. Well, now all those guys they're either going to FIU, FAU, UCF, USF, UWF, who's one of the top D2 programs in D2, which is in Pensacola. And all those guys are playing from day one. And that's something that Bowden didn't have to deal with. That's something that Spurrier didn't have to deal with. And, all those guys, they're not powers now, but UCF is up there. USF at one time, USF was top 10 in 2007. I understand they're one of the worst teams now. FIU, you have Butch Davis, who was one of the best coaches in college football at one time with Miami. So it's just there are a lot of things that factor when people want to talk about recruiting. So you have that aspect, and then you have all the facilities that Florida's in behind in, and Florida's one of like the 5 to 10 programs in the country that doesn't have a football only facility. And Florida gets theirs. I think by the latest will be like the summer. I think it should be up by the spring of next year. So let's see if that changes recruiting, and that's going to be a main topic of conversation. That Georgia out recruits Florida, it is what it is. As we'll go a couple more minutes here. At the Gators final reports, I'm your host, Dylan Denmark. I host On the Mark with Denmark. You can follow me on Twitter here at Dylan_Denmark. I post all my content there for any of my podcasts or any of the shows I do here. That's the best way to get a hold of me and see any of the content I post. So that is there. I'll get to a couple of your guys' last comments before we wrap up the show. Let's make sure we're subscribing and giving a thumbs up and liking all of the shows that are not only here, but also all of the other shows at the Voice of College Football. This is a good question here. Mullen needs to quit playing OC and be a head coach. Head coaches have too much to do. They can't call plays and micromanage. You can call plays, some do, but this is a good question. Should Mullen give up the head coaching duties and give it to someone that he's comfortable with in running the offense? And this is a good point. When you're a head coach, you have to deal with everything. And everything isn't just the football field. You have to deal with all the mess when it comes to, off the field. And I know this is college, but paperwork. The head coach has to deal with all of that. And, some coaches like run the defense, some coaches like run the offense, and some just like be a CEO and letting their coordinators run the show. I think it'll be hard for Mullen to do one thing which he's always done, which is run offense, and then now completely flip it and give it to somebody. Because I think what would happen is if Mullen gave it to somebody, he would still have a say-so, and then if it weren't working, he would then come in and say, okay, I'm running plays now. I wouldn't want that if I were running a program. I wouldn't want that if I were a recruit, and I don't want that if I were a coaching staff. It's kind of like what Manny Diaz did with defense in Miami. He kind of I forget who it was that ran the defense. The D corner ran the defense, and then the defense wasn't playing good. And then he says, I'm calling the plays on defense. That's just, I like things being consistent, knowing what you're doing week to week. The problem with Mullen is sometimes he doesn't take every game seriously. For instance, last year when we lost to both LSU and OU, he said those games didn't really matter. Not a good look. Yeah, the OU game didn't matter. It was an exhibition and a lot of stars didn't play, so I'll say that. But the LSU game, they just weren't locked in, and that was the LSU game last year was that was the quintessential look ahead game. But yeah, this season. I wouldn't go as far as to say that he doesn't take it serious. It's just I don't know something's changed in the program. I don't know if it's the message he gives the players or if the players don't care. Because, I mean, again, the first 4 games, Florida was like a completely different team from what they have been after post Kentucky. So the first third of the season, Florida was this team that could have been forced to be reckoned with, that played with Alabama, that could run the ball, play good defense. And since then, it's been the complete opposite. They haven't been able to move the ball and run the ball like they wanted to. You go from rushing for 360, 380 a week to then 180 to 160. And granted, you play 2 cupcakes, FAU and USF, the first 2, and you play conference games in the last couple of weeks. But that's you shouldn't go from rushing for 380 to a drop of 200 yards. That shouldn't happen. It should be 380, and you play conference play better teams. Okay, then 300, 280, and then your game plan changes so much, because if you're able to run the ball, well, defense will then load the box, and you can take the top off of which opens up the pass game, and that's the way for Anthony Richardson to succeed. And that didn't happen today. Dameon Pierce is the best running back. This is the first time this season he's got more than 8 carries, which is continues to baffle me. The no use of tight ends continues to shock me, specifically from what last year and how promising Zipper and Gamble looked. And they're not even targeted at all. I think that Mullen can do a better job with that. And then Copeland, who I thought was going to emerge as the number 1 receiver, hasn't looked like much. They do target him a lot, but it's like they're trying to, and it looks like when they try to throw it downfield, it's supposed to be open, but the defense is always accounting for it because, well, there's no threat to run the ball. So that's my 2 cents on offense. So Jet drops a comment here. He'll never evaluate himself. He thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, his ego has definitely hurt him. But losses humble you, like the Gators have this year. So Florida's 4-4 right now, and you go through the last 4 games. Next week is South Carolina, Samford, Missouri, and then Florida State. So we'll see what the last third of the season looks like. But because football coaches are the most stubborn people on the planet, and you only change when things aren't going right, and you're losing the way you are, and when fan bases are on top of you. And all 3 things are happening for Florida right now. As we're about to wrap up the Florida Gators final reports, I'm the host, Dylan Denmark, at the Voice of College Football, live here at this channel, the SEC channel, and the Gator channel. Just make sure we're subscribing and giving a thumbs up. And thank you guys for giving me some time, as I guess this will be another therapy session for Gator fans, as this is the 4th one. At another loss, Florida's 4-4. Not the season, not the expectation that Florida had at the beginning of the year, but we stand here. So going forward from here against after Georgia, Florida needs to establish a run game. They need to go back to what they did the first quarter of the season. Florida needs to start Anthony Richardson. He went out with a little like concussion protocol. Dan Mullen said he doesn't know what his status is right now. But he needs to be the quarterback, because you got to look forward to next year. That's got to be the only goal. This season is a lost cause. Whether you go to the Outback Bowl or the Gator Bowl, I mean, who cares? If you 8 wins to 7 wins, your young guys need to get experience for next season. And then it's just that's pretty much it. Pretty much. Todd Grantham has to go at the end of the year, I think, if Dan Mullen's serious and he wants to get where Georgia and Alabama are. And then you gotta get your dudes in recruiting. You got your signing day. That's mid-December, mid to late December. So that's what you got to do. I'll answer a couple of your guys' comments, and then we'll get out of here. That is right. Mullen is on probation right now. Um, yeah. So Jet drops a comment. If Mullen cared, he would do that. Talking about recruiting, funding recruiting. Same for Strickland. It's administrative negligence. Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't know where the order of importance is, and where Scott Strickland wants to prioritize the budget, because recruiting has to be up there. Um, so the facilities are coming along. You got to spend more money recruiting again when you're trying to compete with Georgia and Alabama, and they're spending $3 million. Florida's spending $1 million. That's a huge gap between the two, and it's just one of those things where you got to keep up with the Joneses, and you got to do what they're all doing. You can't say, well, the previous guy didn't need it, so we don't need it now. You live in a different day and age. You can't go off, well, Spurrier didn't recruit, and Spurrier didn't need this. It's just you can't go with that today. Thanks for the comment, Anthony. Go Gators. Sinitar drops. Is the difference in gameplay from the first game till now Mullen's coaching, or is it the players have reached their ceiling with the system? I think it's coaching. I don't think players only reach a ceiling depending on what coaches. How do I put this? Not their motivation, but what a coach is willing to do with the player. Um, some of it's game plan, but it all starts in practice. And some of it has to do with the health of players. But you know, I think some of it too. I haven't talked about this much. I think the more film you put out, obviously the defenses can see what Florida runs, and then game plan for it. And it seems like teams have game planned better against Mullen after they've seen what he's done in the first quarter. Kentucky defensively had a great game plan. LSU had a great game plan. Even though Florida scored 42, the offense for LSU played outstanding and running the football. Georgia had a great game plan, and that's something you haven't seen in the previous 3 years. In 2018, Florida gets they lose first year of the program, that you lose to Kentucky, Missouri. Those weren't good games, and then you lose to Georgia, which was it was a game in the fourth quarter, and then Georgia rolled in the fourth quarter. 2019, Florida gets a great win over Auburn, lose to Georgia again, but it was a 7-point game. But I didn't have the thinking that Mullen was out game planned, and that it didn't seem like he had a good game plan. And that's what's happened so far in the second quarter of the season with Kentucky, LSU, and this Georgia game. Because if you think about it, the game was late second quarter, 3-0. And it should have been tied had Florida not missed the field goal. So within a snap like that, in 2 minutes, it went from Richardson fumble, one drive, touchdown, tip pick, one play, touchdown, and then the pick six. That all happened right at the end of the first half. And that's Anthony Richardson being a freshman, making mistakes. So it's hard to take that away. But if you go before then, I mean, Florida has to execute, and Florida was trying things and it wasn't working. Florida tried the double pass with Jones to Richardson that went deep, that Georgia didn't bite at all. Florida tried the halfback pass that went to the end zone, that didn't work. But again, I think coaches are adjusting more to Mullen, and they're having a game plan a lot better than what they have from my eyes, from what they have from the last 3 seasons that he's been at Florida. Call more comments, and I'll get out of here. The Gators' final reports. Jet goes, you can't go back to the run game. Teams figure that out. Stack the box, and there you have to throw. Yes, but you don't want to get two-dimensional. You don't want to get too one-dimensional with that. You still have to attempt to run the football, because then once they see, okay, if you load the box and you're going to check out of the run and you're going to throw it, that's just too easy. You still have to attempt to run the football. And a lot of it, I didn't really write notes throughout the game, but a lot of it has to do with third down. And Florida today, let me see, they were 2 for 4 on fourth down today, I believe. They got a 4th and 2. Richardson ran the power. Give me 1 second. For a third down, Florida was 4 for 13. So they were okay. And Florida had 20 first downs, but I think some of that was in garbage time when the game was over in the fourth quarter. But you have a successful third down, and you have a higher probability of getting third and fourth down when you have good first and second downs. So what I mean by that is, first down you get 3 yards, second down you get 3 or 4. So then you get a third and short. So when you get third down, your playbook is this, and you can run whatever you want on third down instead of it being passed only on 3rd and 7 or longer, if that makes sense. And Florida it seemed like to me, they kept finding themselves in situations where it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 long, and it's obvious passing situation where defenses know, okay, Florida has to throw the ball, so then all we got to do is drop back and let everything fall in front of us and know to not let anything get past the first down marker. And that's huge, because if it's 3rd and 2, you got to account for the run. And if it's AR in the backfield, you got to account for the power. You got to account for there's so much more, the RPO, him throwing the ball. If it's 3rd and 8, you don't have to account for that. This will be the last comment from Anthony, and I'll let you guys go at the Gators' final report at the Voice of College Football. I'm your host, Dylan Denmark. Catch my podcast, On the Mark with Denmark. Just search it on YouTube, as I'll try to pump out more content throughout next week as Florida moves to 4-4 after losing to Georgia 34-7. Has not been the season Florida's wanted so far this season, specifically after the Alabama game. But it's where they stand, and Florida going from here, they just need to win the last third of the season, their last 4 games, and then just hit the recruiting trail and hope for the best after Florida's lost a couple of recruits in the last couple of weeks. But Anthony drops in. He better not lose to FSU. That's the only thing that matters. Still watch the game, and I'm still not giving up on the Gators. Yeah, boy, if Florida loses to Florida State, that's I think that would do some damage in recruiting. Because number one, Mike Norvell could use that to his advantage over Florida and Dan Mullen. But boy, that would be one, that would be awful, just losing to them in general, especially where Florida State's at in their program. And two, to end the season with a bitter taste in your mouth, to end the season at home that way, that wouldn't be good. Florida needs to win out. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, Florida should beat South Carolina. They should be double-digit favorite against South Carolina and Samford, your next 2 games. But then you go on the road, and Florida has not looked good on the road at LSU and at Kentucky. Neutral site game, so this wasn't a true road test. But, we'll see. That Florida-Missouri game is always a noon kick. The crowd never plays a factor, but the crowds have played factors against Kentucky when you saw Florida have 15 penalties and 8 false starts. We'll see if Anthony Richardson, if he can go next week, being in the concussion protocol. Hopefully he's able to, because he needs to be the guy going forward. He needs to be the future of the program, in my opinion. But, yeah, Florida does need to win that FSU game and win the rest of these games, not only for just sake of winning and patting your winning record, but just for the sake of the program and recruiting and going forward. So that'll do it. Went almost an hour and a half talking to myself. I think that breaks the record. I'm going to try to get Terry Norvell on. I tried to get him on the post game today, but he went to the game and he wasn't able to. So I'll catch up with him. He's the owner of College Sports Today. Catch him out on Facebook. He does a show with two guys by the name of Shane Matthews and Steve Spurrier. Maybe you've heard of them. So we'll chop it up and talk about where Florida's at right now. Because I mean, no two guys know where Florida's at right now than Shane Matthews and Steve Spurrier, and two guys that have done it. So so that'll be next week. I'll post that on the SEC and the Florida Gator channel. Make sure we subscribe and give a thumbs up to all these pages at the Voice of College Football, and check out all the post-game shows at the Voice of College Football, and always check out Mark Rogers' show where you can call in and talk anything college football with any team every single Saturday night. That'll do it for me, Dylan Denmark, signing off. I got to go catch up with some people. It's Florida Georgia weekend. I'm in Jacksonville. So that'll do it for another loss from Florida. Florida 7, Georgia 34. And that'll do it for me signing off. Everybody have a good weekend. That'll do it.